We're going on a mystic journey, traveling through the atmosphere. Level Cap Podcast is here to talk about all things Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, best friends, or otherwise. Level 99 games too.
Yeah, I don't think we're actually going to talk about any of those things except level 99 games today.
Yep, definitely. That was a lie. That was a bold-faced lie. Welcome to the new Level Cap Podcast, where we lie about everything.
Your face is so bold, Marco.
Ah, yes, face indeed quite bold. I'm sorry, I'm just coming off the cusp of the greatest YouTube series that I've watched.
I think it's a bald-faced lie, not a bold-faced lie.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
What's a bald face?
I think it's when your face is not even covered. You're just saying it like right out in the open.
Okay.
Where I guess I don't know, but like a bold-faced lie, you can't speak in boldface, so
that's fair.
That doesn't make sense at all.
That's fair. Okay, no. Okay, this is another case of Marco being Filipino and mixing.
Well, I've always wondered about it. That's why I brought it up, because my mom used to say bald-faced lie. And my grandma used to say that, but I never understood it either, and I always used to say bold-faced lie, but then I figured, no, that doesn't make sense. They must have been right, and I just don't know what that means.
I'm so confused now. I'm Googling it.
So welcome, everyone. While Marco Googles, I will introduce this episode. We have a exciting docket for you today. One of the newest innovations to the Level Cap podcast is planning. Marco and Brad planned this episode out before starting, and that's going to make it a great episode. Marco, welcome back.
I'm back. So, in fact, they're both correct. They just happen to have two slightly different meanings.
So we're both right.
Yeah, so a bald-faced lie or
you and my
barefaced.
grandma are both right.
Yeah, okay, sure. So
it's a barefaced lie.
Yeah, it's a barefaced lie. It means one is undisguised and it's clearly false. The bold-faced lie is one that is impudent and disrespectful.
I see. Okay, interesting.
So we're both right. Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Except for me, there's no bald face. It's just there's bold face and there's bare face, and I conflated the two.
I see.
And created a conflation.
All right, Brad. So our Game Club game for this week is what exactly?
Well, it's really more of a genre. We're going to talk about exploration games.
Yeah.
And name a few of these. Recently, you might know Amnesia, Gone Home, Dear Esther. Some of the ones you may not realize, games like Night in the Woods also fall into this category. Basically, We're talking about games where you just walk around and interact with people or the environment.
Yeah, nothing happens. That's what Brad calls them, like games where nothing happens.
Games where nothing happens.
Yeah.
It's a good, or where everything has already happened at the start of the game.
Oh, I like that one. I think So wait.
This is a great segue into Fallout 76, actually. We're going to talk about that at the end.
Oh my gosh, sure. So quick explanation about this. So Brad and I decided to change up Game Club a bit. Instead of making it about specific games, we're going to make them about genres of games. That way Brad and I don't always have to play the same game, and that we can provide unique insights about like the genres in general and their design.
Because we always end up talking about other games in the genre anyway. So it just seemed like, why beat around the bush?
Yeah, why limit ourselves? So Brad, exploration games, what are they aside from games where nothing happens? Like, what are they to you based on the ones you've played?
Well, I'd say that they're probably the spiritual successors to like point-and-click adventure games. Coming out of games like like Monkey Island, or even older out of if you played like the text adventures like Zork and stuff.
Oh man, that's
they
cold.
Kind of feel like they're coming from that and modernizing that genre. And my main experience with these, I've played both of the Amnesia games. I've played Gone Home. I've played Night in the Woods. So I have that kind of experience with these games. How about you, Marco?
So I've played Night in the Woods. I've watched many people play many of the other games, including Amnesia and Gone Home. So I've also watched like a ton of adventure games, if that counts.
Yeah, I think it does in this sense.
Yeah. So to me, these kinds of games are mainly characterized by the fact that they're meant to evoke some sort of emotional response or tell you a story, right? Like ultimately these games are not games. uh, in a sense that they're basically just overly complicated visual novels, right? Because that's what they feel like sometimes.
I think they're a little bit like puzzles, in the sense that there is a story, but the story is told through the environment. And you have to go discover the story. So you might even say this is like, I don't know, a investigation game.
So it's basically Dark Souls, but without any of the combat. If you think about it that way. No.
Oh me! Oh my! Maybe we shouldn't go there just yet.
Not yet. It's the Dark Souls of adventure games. Yeah. So in the end, I tend to think that they're very narrative heavy, and basically everything in the game is structured in such a way that it pushes you towards the story or experience or emotion that they want you to experience, right? And it's not really about mechanics and game systems and combat and any of those stuff.
Yeah, like for example, like in Night of the Woods, there's this mini game where you can play music, right? And if you play the music really well, then your friends are like, good job, that was great." And if you play the music really bad, they're like, "Yeah, looks like you forgot how to play guitar while you were at college."
Bass.
And or
Correction,
bass, yeah,
it's
the bass
bass.
guitar.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's like the only repercussion of winning the mini game or losing the mini game. Rather.
Really? Yeah. Okay. So it's weird to me, right? I guess it's weird to me that that's the repercussion, but at the same time, I find it kind of cool. So let's segue a bit here. Now we know what they are. The ultimate question is, Brad, do we like them? Do you like these kinds of games?
I would say I do. I haven't played one that I didn't enjoy playing, but you do have to be in the right mood for it. My best experience with these games would be the Amnesia series. I really liked both Amnesia 1 and 2. And they really do give you that... it's kind of like if you've ever gone to a haunted house. Right? This is kind of a haunted house simulator. You're going through this house. There are these monsters that can kill you. And you're kind of like, creeping around the corners trying to, avoid alerting them to your presence. So there is a stealth aspect to it. And it is very atmospheric. And I think the best games are the ones that make the game atmosphere work.
That's true. You know what? I'm starting to realize that a lot of those popular horror games also fit into this genre, right? Like the Slender Man.
They could. Yeah, like Slender could probably fit in here.
Five Nights at Freddy's?
Five Nights Five Nights you can lose though.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah.
And there's a game happening there.
There's actually a game. Yeah.
Yeah. But Five Nights would not be very far from this genre.
Yeah.
It is a game about exploring and looking for evidence and getting into this atmospheric mood. And you do have very little you can do to interact with the world. But there is a game, and there is like actual gameplay in Five Nights. So I don't know if I'd throw it in this category. What about you, Marco? Do you like them?
Okay, so here's the thing, right? As a mechanics kind of guy, it is literally in my username, right? As a mechanics kind of guy, I can respect these kinds of games, but I wouldn't say that I like playing them or that I would want to play them more, right? It also doesn't help that a lot of these games tend to evoke the atmosphere by making it first person, right? And I can't play first person games because I just have motion sickness and it kills me, right? In the end, I find myself enjoying stuff like Night in the Woods way more because number one, they're not first person. And number two, it's written really, really well. I think, in my opinion, the ones that I can really get into are the dialogue heavy ones. If it's stuff like Dear Esther or whatever, I might have a tough time doing that. Yeah. Because like Amnesia and Dear Esther are kind of dialogue light, especially when you compare it to Night in the Woods, where over 90-something% of it is like dialogue.
Yeah,
right?
It's just talking to people.
Yeah, it's just talking.
No,
to
that makes sense. I do enjoy the like especially in Gone Home and in Amnesia, finding those little snippets that tell the story, and kind of in to go back to your Dark Souls reference. You are kind of piecing the story together from scraps, and it's the same thing as like, where you realize there's a bigger narrative here, and I'm only seeing pieces of it.
Yeah.
But that's the game in these games, as opposed to it's kind of just something that was thrown in for games like Dark Souls.
Yeah.
The world is more than the backdrop. The world is your stage. I'd say they're really kind of similar to the thematic experience.
Like theater is what you're saying? Theater?
No, more like the differences between a game, say like Evil Within or from Amnesia, though really like you get thematically the same feelings from the game. You get those feelings of horror. The only difference is that I can't kill the enemies. I have to find other ways around them. So I have to be a little more creative. And B, I don't have to repeat a sequence when I die. In Amnesia, when you die, the enemy that killed you also gets removed from the map.
Oh, I did. Okay, yeah. Man, it's been a while since I've watched an amnesia playthrough.
Yeah. So it's very scary when you hide in a closet and the monster walks by. But even if you screw up and they do kill you, you just get a jump scare and then you go back into the same sequence without that monster there.
Okay, so games where nothing happens, Amnesia, Evil Within, all of these games, Brad. So ultimately, these are these are mechanics sparse kinds of games, right?
Yeah, all the mechanisms in these games are gating mechanisms. Generally, they're there to make you go to their keys or their keypads or their passwords, or they are hidden passageways. They're things that you have to discover to progress. So they're all progression gating mechanics, generally.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my opinion on these kinds of games, right? This is where the genre breaks, or the shine rubs off, whatever, right? Is that I often feel like I could have just gotten the same experience if I had just watched someone play it on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like, I could just watch a playthrough on YouTube and it would be the same. Ultimately, like, while I appreciate games that are built to give you a story and or experience or evoke an emotion, I get the feeling that it's a bit of a cop-out, because I've played games that have done that while still being quote-unquote actual games. Like there's Transistor, there's Bastion, there's Persona. There's like a bunch of JRPGs that I've played, right? So ultimately my question is like, why wasn't this thing just a movie or a book, right? So for some games I kind of understand why you couldn't make it just a movie or a book, because the way you interact with the world is actually how it progresses or gates its story. But for something like Night in the Woods, for example, right? Like, I would have preferred to just have like a 12-episode Netflix series about Night in the Woods than play Night in the Woods. Like for Amnesia.
I think that's not unfair, although I would say there is some excitement to being in control of the situation. You can go back and you can look in that corner, you can pick up that book and you can read it at your own pace. Being able to go and check all the panels on the wall for secret passages, those are the kind of things that that the genre allows you to do. Now, I think it really only comes together when developers put in those secrets and those Easter eggs. And so, like, Gone Home is a really good example of this. This is a game where you are investigating this house to try and figure out what happened to your family. And you can follow the main plot and you find out what happened to your sister. But you can also figure out what happened to your parents through that whole through all the different things, and not just like, oh, they're away at some retreat. Like, you actually can find out what happened to their marriage and what happened to your dad's career and what happened to your mom's career. Like, all this information is hidden throughout the house and you can piece it all together. But if somebody else was making that run, you might get more than you wanted. You may not care about some of those things and end up sitting and reading through them anyway, or you might care about some things that get missed. You might want to give more treatment to those things, or you might want to just sit and think about them some more. And having it be a video game is a way to experience that medium. And so I guess I would say that the real question maybe we should be asking is, why are more Netflix series not video games?
Oh, okay. Now that's an interesting question. Obviously, the answer
it is a great way to experience an interactive environment.
Yeah, I guess that's true, right? Like, I guess it ultimately boils down to something like this, right? Like, hey, Brad, would you say visual novels fit into this genre?
I wouldn't say that visual novels do, and Night in the Woods kind of straddles it for me, because but the game doesn't give you choices and nothing happens in the game, and so I think that it does kind of fall into this situation. But I would say that it's very far afield. Subnautica is also something I would say is kind of overlapping with this genre, except that there's a lot of mechanics. But all the mechanics in Subnautica are also, well, aside from the crafting mechanics, are gating mechanics.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, can you have enough materials to do this X thing and build this boat, whatever, right?
Or get this deep in the ocean. But it's also a game that's about exploration.
Yeah.
It's just that the game mechanics enable exploration. So it's a little, I'd say it's a little bit rough definition
Yeah.
to say that it's games where nothing happens.
Yeah, definitely. But like, I think I understand what you mean, right? Most people just call this genre walking simulators, right? Because that's all they
walking
really
sims or exploration games.
Yeah, walking sims.
Yeah.
So I think here's the thing we both kind of agree on. Characters are developed deeply through setting cues and interactions. Honestly, for me, these games truly shine when the character and the setting is brought into light, right? Because ultimately, the quote-unquote gameplay to this game is finding out the lore and reading about the world and understanding the setting, right? So this is where this shines, because since everything is kind of like quote-unquote set on rails, it's not actually set on rails because they do give you some sort of agency, but because the developers are able to understand where you will be at any point in time, they can kind of curate the environment to tell the story as you're going through it, right? And Stanley Parable is basically kind of like this, right?
That's probably the biggest example that everybody's seen, and we didn't even mention it. But yeah, Stanley Parable is the obvious one.
Yeah, Stanley Parable is
and it's completely a walking simulator.
Yeah, literally. I mean, like, sure, you kind of make decisions and stuff, but it's just literally a walking simulator, and where you do nothing. And eventually, I do kind of think it's just a glorified visual novel, because instead of making choices, you just walk in different paths, which are just choices. But really, in the end, like, I feel like this is where that genre shines, right? Because they're able to basically curate the scene based on what you're doing or what you've done or whatever. It can do some crazy stuff. And Stanley Parable does this the best, right? When they're like, when they go like, oh, you've gone through this space 7 times. And like, oh, dang, I did go through this space 7 times. And that, I think, is what captures what makes it, like, that answers my question of why isn't this just a book/movie/Netflix series, right? Because you can't do that in a Netflix series or a book or something like that. Because
right, it does. It's something unique to the game genre.
Yeah, exactly. The game is able to track the way I personally interacted with it, and that's really, really where it shines. And ultimately, I feel like the lack of mechanics is quote-unquote made up for by the game or the narrative being quote-unquote smart about the way you interact with it, right? So be that because of the way it presents the characters to you through dialogue, or the narrator makes a comment about how you like Super Smash Brothers or whatever. Wait, that might be a Metal Gear reference. Whatever. But yeah, that's it. I feel like this is where the game shines the most. I feel like this is the part that makes me love this genre the most, makes me like Night in the Woods, makes me like Stanley Parable, despite it being a first-person game.
Yeah, I think it's a good assessment, Marco. And I would really like to see more games in this genre. I mean, imagine playing like Dark Souls, where you are not a knight, but you are like a historian who's going through these ruins and trying to piece together what happened to this fallen kingdom. Or imagine playing like Kingdom Hearts, but instead of being the Sora with this Keyblade, you know, you're a kid who's lost his parents and the Disney characters are trying to help you get home. Like, that would be like, you know, and you also resolve their stories in a very Christopher Robin sort of way. I think that would be way cooler than the current Kingdom Hearts. Or even Persona, you know, you have to like go inside to these people's hearts and help them to reconcile with themselves through dialogue and through like finding different pieces Inception style and assembling them together. Like, those would all be very different games, but very cool games. And we really haven't seen anybody put the kind of energy and budget into this genre that could, you know, that could fund a blockbuster like that.
Hey,
like
Brad.
Those other games.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah?
Do you know the return of Obra Dinn?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Okay, basically, what you're talking about, basically, this sounds like your jam. This might be your jam. So, listeners, and Brad, the return of Obra Dinn is from the guy who made Papers, Please. Okay? Mm-hmm. And literally, this is like, what's the concept? You are like an investigator investigating a ship manifest. The ship rides up to the shore and it's empty. All the crew members are dead, right? And you have to find out what happened on the ship.
That does sound cool.
Yeah, and here's the gimmick, quote-unquote, is that you have a magic pocket watch that you can use on skeletons found on the ship, because the ship was, like, lost, like, 200 years ago or whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
So you have a magic pocket watch that can quote unquote bring you back in time to the exact second a skeleton or that person died. But you don't know anything else. So literally you press the button and it time travels back 200 years to the exact moment that person died. But only at that exact moment, right? So it's frozen in time.
So it's just a single snapshot.
Yes, exactly. And there's this vignette of a guy getting stabbed in the back by a pirate, right? But you don't know any of these characters' names. You don't know anything about them. And using that snapshot, you have to figure out, like, who these people are, who died, how did they die, what day did they die, and all of that stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely need to play this game.
Yeah, so that might sound like your jam. It's literally an exploration game where the main point is to figure out the story of the ship and how its crew members died.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty awesome.
Yep. All right, so I guess that's it. Okay, so exploration genre, walking simulators. Brad, what is your final verdict on this genre?
I like them. I want to see more games, and I want to see more games that are about solving the mystery of the world that you're in. And I think I'd like to see them with a higher budget and higher production values go a little more mainstream. It's difficult to do, but I think that whoever can really bring this kind of game to the mainstream first will have good success with it.
Okay, in my opinion, I kind of agree that if they do make something that's good enough and has enough quote-unquote gameplay in it, and I think ultimately The Return of Obra Dinn, if it were better produced, is the kind of game that I would want. Because, like, the big negative, quote-unquote, of this game is that the graphics aren't necessarily the best. It's a stylistic choice, right? I'll put up a picture, or if you're listening on the podcast, it basically looks like bad 3D models that have, like, the Game Boy Color filter on top of them. So it looks like everything's, like, pixelated 3D. I don't know how else to explain it.
This is not the first game that I've seen in this style.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that. So, you know what? I think at the end of the day, maybe it just needs to be the right setting and the right thing for me. Because when we're talking about Amnesia Gone Home and all of this stuff, I'm like, it's okay, whatever. But if you told me that there was like a detective story where you have to find out who murdered this and that, it's essentially also a walking sim, right? But I'm a sucker for detective stories. It seems like my biggest gripe about this genre is that everybody wants to do, like, creepy, unsettling. Can't I just have, like, a detective story or like that Disney Kingdom Hearts thing that you proposed? That would be awesome, right? I'm so sick of, like, ooh, creepy, your parents are dead, woo, like, come on.
That's Batman.
Yes, and it's all his fault. I hate Batman so much. We can talk about it on another episode.
Anyway, maybe on the Telltale Games episode.
Oh my gosh, let's not talk about it.
Anyway. Let's move on and talk about our pipeline this week.
All right, Brad. So let's move on to the next segment, also known as the pipeline, also known as Brad's segment. Brad, what are we going to talk about this week, where we talk about all things Level 99 Games, production or otherwise?
Well, I told you a little bit earlier about how we were planning for 2019 lineup, and so recently I've been planning the 2019 and 2020 product line. And it's been a little different than past years for two big reasons. One is that I have a lot of new tools to work with. So we have survey data, we now have focus groups. The other big thing is that we have a lot of games to pick from. In previous years, I had like one or two ideas, and I was like, okay, well, we'll do this one first, and we'll do that one second. In this year, we have like 9 different games that we could actually launch into immediately at the start of the next year. So picking which one of those is the right one to move forward with, and which ones merit the most development time and all that, that's been what I've been working on for the past few weeks. And I do want to give a shout out to everyone who has helped me out. I've been doing a lot of focus group discussions to show off these proposals. We did a big survey, and I want to thank everyone that participated in the survey. We had over 1,500 responses to that survey, helping us to know what kind of genres people like, what kind of themes that our fans are interested in, how many players a game needs to support, how long a game needs to play. That kind of stuff is really useful to us. And also what features that players are looking for, whether they want metal coins or cooperative gameplay or cool miniatures, all that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about planning and what it all entails. So as we get together these proposals, things that we're looking for are many-fold. Biggest one, of course, is resources. So can we make the game? Do we have the money? Do we have the the resources to do it?
Do you have the technology, Brad?
Does everything exist to make the game that we want to make it? The next one would be the timing. So if we start this game now, how long is it going to take to finish? And that ties into talent availability. So who is going to make this game and how much time are they going to take? So No Commento right now is working on Imperial and on BattleCon. If we asked her to do another game on top of that in the world of Indines, that would probably push that game back to winter of next year at the earliest.
Oh my gosh. Would she die from all the work she has to do?
No, but it would be, we would be waiting on the game. So a game that requires No Commento to do art for it is going to be a game that is not going to happen until the middle to end of next year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the reality of life. If we can bring in new artists or try a different style or a different theme, then we could start on a different game a little earlier and have a better chance, a better timeline, a more flexible timeline for that game.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
The final thing that we've been investing a lot of energy in is discovering market readiness for each game. Rather, is this a game that people want? Is this a game that people can afford? Is this a game that will sell once we do make it? So first we're talking about can we make the game? Now we're talking about should we make the game? And that's a question that we have sometimes failed to ask over the history of this company.
Really? So what games do you feel like were like this?
That we said, should we make this game?
No, that we didn't go, should we make this game? And then we ended up making it.
Well, I don't want to talk about all that because they are, mostly it's games that I really liked, but that I didn't think, well, will other people like this? And I'm pretty flexible. I like a lot of games, and I like playing games. And so if you show me a game, I'm probably going to enjoy it. And if the game is not made yet, I'm probably going to say, hey, we should make that game. But I'm different than most people because I buy and sell and trade a lot of games. Yeah. And most people purchase a couple games a year. And that, so I have to worry about the actual market. So we've learned bigger games tend to do better. So we want to do more Millennium Blades, and we want to do less of the smaller types of games.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, and that's not to say that games like Noir and Sellswords have done bad necessarily. It's just that they have to sell 2 or 3 times as much to justify or to have the same impact that just a small number of sales has on a big game like Millennium Blades, Argent, or Devastation. So, and given the time and energy that our team needs to make even one game, it seems like a sounder investment to make a big game.
So, Brad, here's the ultimate question. You have all this data. You have all this knowledge. You are now Brad level 99, right? So, what game should you make?
So, I was a little bit surprised, maybe not too surprised, but a little bit surprised. The game that all the data points to us making as our highest priority is a World of Indines cooperative dungeon crawl game. So that's when you think about that, you're like, yeah, that seems pretty obvious, but it wasn't something that really occurred to me until I looked at all the data and all the comments that people were making, and then I ran some imaginary metrics. I took all the games that we're planning and I plotted their genre and their theme and their player counts and all these things together, and I looked at which one is expected. If you just pick a random fan, how likely is he to like each one of these games?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the theoretical World of Indines cooperative dungeon crawl is the most liked game out of all the proposals.
Hey Brad.
Yeah.
Time to reskin 7th Cross, because this is exactly what we need.
Nah, 7th Cross is a monster fighting game. There's not a dungeon crawl. So I do want to make that distinction. This is a game about fighting big monsters.
Okay.
And there is exploration, but it's free roaming exploration. It's not the directed exploration of a dungeon crawl.
You know what, Brad? I'm gonna make a World of Indies cooperative dungeon crawl. Just you watch me.
Okay. All right. I'll look forward to your submission.
All right, great. So,
But I've started putting together some ideas myself, so
oh no, then I'm done. I can't beat.
first one to market wins.
I can't beat Overlord himself because the only way I'd ever get my thing published is to go through you first. So I'm done.
Well, the only solution then is to share all of your cool ideas with me, and we can work on it together, Marco.
That's true. Okay, so here's my cool idea. Right, it's about fidget spinners.
All right, we're done. Moving on.
moving on. Brad, so are there any problems? Like, has the data shown?
The data shows us which games are more likely to do well in the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've also had our focus groups where we get 6 to 8 people together and we just talk about a proposal. And in those groups, we've kind of identified things that are potential problems for a game. I don't want to speak specifically because we've done like 7 or 8 proposals, so they'll all be a little different. But most importantly, we figure out what we have to prove in the game. So, for example, if we're making a game that's in the world of Indines, people are going to want us to prove that the game upholds the aesthetics of that world, that it upholds the feeling of that world, that it involves the characters of that world.
I see.
If we're making a new property, people will want to know that the property has depth to it, that the game will potentially have a future beyond just one box. If we're making a game that is slightly unique, like a cooperative Euro or a team versus team or a one versus many type game, people will want to see more reviews because it'll need to be proven that the game is balanced and playable and replayable in a way that is consistent with what they're looking for in the game. So we won't have people who automatically say, hey, this is a World of Indies game for level 99, I gotta get this. If we do something that's really out in left field, we have a lot more to prove to our fans.
I see. Which I guess makes sense, right? Like,
It does. But knowing specifically what we have to prove is very useful.
yeah, that's good to know. This brings the question, like, how much higher, how much less does having a different artist do a World of Indies game impact how legit people think that game is set in the World of Indies? Like, if there's a World of Indies game that Noko doesn't draw, will people even think it's World of Indies? I'm starting to question myself.
That's something that has come up a lot in our discussion groups. I don't have a concrete answer, but the lean of it is that we can do it, but it will be more important to associate the game with the world in other ways.
I see. So, like, through memorable characters or events that are everywhere in the game or something like that, right?
Yeah, and we definitely do need to keep that anime style. We want our artists to be using the same references and the same style cues as Nokomento and Fabio have used, but we can change the style a little bit, and it's going to be okay. I mean, Noko's style varies between game to game, and that's okay.
Yeah. So it's basically okay so long as, like, the next day it doesn't come back and it looks like Cuphead, right? Like,
yeah, we don't want something like that.
That'd be cool, though. That'd be a cool set. Hey everyone, post-production Marco with a small message from Brad.
We are recruiting for playtesting. You've heard me talk about the pipeline today and how we are using the help of our playtesters to build better games in the future. We want you to join our playtesters. So if you get the opportunity, check the link below the video, below the podcast, in the blog, and sign up for our playtesting. Join the Discord community and become a part of Level 99 Games. We could really use your help to make tomorrow's games.
And now, back to the show. So let's move on to our last segment, Brad, our 99 questions, where I take your questions and we answer them. Oh.
Brilliant, Marco. Nobody saw that coming.
Oh, see, you never see it coming. Okay.
Wow.
Dude, I love that meme. That's the best
Props.
meme. All right. Any chance to see Exceed online in the future, Brad?
It is pretty unlikely. It's not our priority because we have BattleCon Online and that requires a lot of support already. But we are looking for, we are doing more video games. Exceed is not something we're planning on right now.
Yeah, I think...
Plus,
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I think
No, most of the characters aren't owned by us.
exactly.
Right.
Like that's the big problem, right? Like the point of Exceed is that the licenses are from other people that we don't own.
So especially with Street Fighter that was just announced. So we announced 15 new fighters for Street Fighter.
Woot woot.
That is going to impact, like obviously we can't do a video game that includes Street Fighter characters on our own. That would be a licensing nightmare and or illegal if we skip licensing. So there are technical reasons that Exceed can't be our next video game.
Yeah. And I feel like many people would just say, "Oh, then just use only 7th Cross characters." But that does an injustice to the game, right? Like a big point of the game is that you get to play with all of these like licensed characters. And if you just reskin them to not be licensed anymore, like what's the point, right?
I think it is a draw of the game, and also you just double the art budget. So it's not like you're really saving anything. It cost us tens of thousands of dollars to illustrate 7th Cross Exceed. And when we get a license like Street Fighter, it costs us tens of thousands of dollars to cover the license. So we pay about the same, except if we decide to change course, we have to pay that much money again.
Yeah. And
now, Exceed it sells well, but I can't afford to pay the art budget twice.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's absurd. Absolutely absurd. So, you know what, at the end of the day, I think Be Happy BattleCon Online's here, and there's going to be other stuff too. I mean, we don't always just have to port our board games. We can just make original video games now, apparently.
Yeah, maybe even an exploration game.
Yeah, okay, so this time it's about fidget spinners, Brad. How about that?
Oh my gosh, Marco.
Okay,
Marco.
Next question. What is your biggest regret
Marco.
in BattleCon?
My biggest regret is fidget spinners. I regret that you discovered that they exist.
Look, okay, what if it's a fidget spinner, but it's kind of like Van Diesel, right? So there's like a face on each of the 3 things.
Oh my gosh, horrifying. It's horrifying.
What is your biggest regret in BattleCon universe, lore-wise?
I don't have any regrets for the world of Indines. Things weren't always the way I planned, but I love how it all turned out. How the backer characters integrated into the world, how the world came together, and the places and the people in it kind of evolved around the wishes of the community and the feel that the community lended to the world. So I think it's a little of both. It might be a little bit of self-fulfilling prophecy, but I feel like the world of Indines attracted people that could help it to grow in accordance with its destiny.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Fate. This was fated, you know?
Yeah, like the world attracted you, and then you helped to improve this world in a way that was in accordance with the spirit of the world.
I think I kind of understand.
Because it was that spirit that attracted you.
I think I kind of understand, right? Like, anime fans get attracted to certain kinds of anime, which makes the fandom for that anime better, therefore enriching that world because the people who like that genre went there, right? Kind of like that.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Well, aside from all that, I have a regret. I have a big regret. A huge regret. The fact that Wilhelm Bartz does not play a major role in any of the storylines, is not even a fighter, and we don't get any more lore on him, and yet he is the best character, better than Wardlaw. 2018, DeSantos.
You and your obscure characters, Marco.
The only reason he is obscure is because the community continuously oppresses his presence.
He'll show up again in Imperial, don't worry.
I need my Wilhelm boy, Wilhelm Bartz.
Oh man,
I
Marco.
already have a headcanon for this guy. Is that every time he gets hit, he just does the Wilhelm scream.
I don't even know. I don't even know how to follow that. Next question. Marco.
Last question, Brad. What is your plan regarding BCO's roster? BCO being BattleCon Online. Do you want to maintain a regular character release schedule like every 2 weeks or every month? What would be the ideal roster size in your eyes?
Well, I don't know. You know, we always said we would stop at 100 BattleCon fighters. I think we just want to support the game. We want to do a character a month as long as the community is going to continue to support the game. And hopefully take a month or two off in the next year just to do some feature updates for the game.
Yeah.
So I think all that's what we want to do with BCO.
I see.
So yeah.
Ideally,
like, it's good to keep updating.
I think ideally I would like a character a month as well. But I feel like there should be like some sort of hard cap on how many characters we put into VCO. Like
probably. I mean, it would take. Let's say you wanted like 60 characters, right?
It would take 5 years.
We're gonna have 24 probably by the end of this year. So you're looking at 3 years. So that'd be in 2021 that you'd have to revisit it and say, hey, I think we're getting close to this cap.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not a problem that for the present that we have to deal with.
That's definitely true. And it's definitely not going to be a 1:1 transition from the physical roster, because I feel like some of the physical characters would be improbable to do in the current video game system.
And a couple of them could be done better. Like, take, for example, Kalistar. Rather than having 2 triggers on each of her cards just change in the online version.
Yeah, definitely.
To be with their updated text. And that's, I think, a better way to do it. And that's an example of using the technology to improve a character that worked on paper, but could work even better in digital.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, some of the characters... I don't know if there's any other example other than Kalistar in the current cast, wherein the digital version of them is just better than the physical version because of, like, the digital space requirements. But yeah, I'm assuming Syndra would be similar as well. So... You know what? At the end of the day, I think a lot of the characters with tracking, who have like multiple resources and have like 17 triggered effects or whatever, like the video game just makes playing them so much easier, right? Like, I don't think I could place like, I don't know, a character like Karen in physical because I would forget one of her triggered effects at some point. Yeah. So that's it. All right, so that pretty much does it for our 99 questions. If you want to send us more questions and ask more stuff about level 99 games, please put it in the comments section down below or click on our Google link form and submit your questions there. And as much as I would like to keep chatting about and shooting the bird, breeze.
Okay, well, a few notes. So we've recently released the Street Fighter Exceed bundle in our online store. For $99.95, you can pre-order all 3 boxes, 15 fighters of Exceed, and get a brand new store-exclusive Exceed Street Fighter playmat. That deal is right now in our online store, www.level99games.com/shop. Check it out when you get a chance. You won't find it anywhere else.
Yeah, all right.
Cool.
So, as much as I would like to keep shooting the bird breeze, Brad, I think we should end this episode of the podcast.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up, Marco.
Wrap it up. As usual, that has been me, your host, Marco DeSantos, also known as Mechanic Rick, and with me has been my amazing Splendiferous. I actually don't know what Splendiferous means. Co-host,
Brad Talton.
And as usual, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Level Cap Podcast. If you liked it, share it with a friend. If you hated it, share it with an enemy. Don't forget your special action. And thank you, World of Indines. Thank you, and good night.
And as always, happy gaming.